Hello and welcome to the fourth tutorial in my Roblox beginner scripting series. So in today's video, we'll be looking at what if statements are and what the return keyword does. So I'm going to sort of script service. So what are if statements? If statements are a statement that will test if a given condition is true, and if it is, then it will execute the code given. So I'm going to make a variable, set it to true. So to write an if statement, you first do if and then the condition. So I'm going to check if variable is equal to true, then. And then inside of here, if this condition right here is true, then this code will run. So these two equal signs here is an operator. So this is checking if this is equal to whatever this is. So this will return true. See, if I do variable is equal to true, if I print this and run it, it will print true in the output. But if I do if variable equals false, so if I print variable equals false, since variable is not equal to false, then this will return false and print false. So there are a bunch of different types of these operators right here. These are called relational operators. So you have the equals, which will just check if what's on the left side is equal to what's on the right side. And then you also have not equal to, which will check if what's over on the left side is not equal to what's on the right side. You have greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and then less than or equal to. So these can only be used with numbers, but these can be used with any type of data types. So I'm going to write a print statement variable is true. So you'll see that when this code will run, it'll initialize a variable and set it to true. And then I'm going to check if variable is equal to true. And if it is true, then it'll run this code. So since variable is equal to true, it will run and it'll print that. But if I say if variable is equal to false, then it won't print this because variable is equal to true and it's not equal to false. So I can also do if variable is not equal to. So I can say if variable is not equal to true, then run this. But variable is equal to true, so this won't run, as you can see. But if I set this to false, let's say if variable is not equal to false, then it will print. So some other keywords involved with if statements is else and else if. Else if. So in this if statement, if I put the else keyword, and I'm going to set this to if variable is equal to false. So this code will run. So it'll say if variable is equal to false, then, and since variable is equal to true, this will return false. So it'll move on and then it'll see this else keyword. So if this statement isn't true, if this condition isn't true, and there's an else keyword, then it'll run whatever is in this code block. So I'll say print variable is not true. Sorry. It's not false. So it should print variable is not false, as you can see. All right, so the other important keyword with if statements is else if. So I wrote up this little if statement here, and I'll run you through it. So basically what it's doing is it's checking if 5 plus 4 is equal to 10, then it'll print this. Else if 5 plus 5 is equal to 10, then it'll print this. But if neither of these statements are true, then it'll just print this. And you can have as many else if statements as you want. But if none of these else if statements or these if statements, if none of these conditions are true, then it'll always come back and print what is in the else statement. So it should print 5 plus 5 is equal to 10. If we run this, so you see 5 plus 5 is equal to 10. All right, so what are some use cases of if statements? Well, I'm going to use some knowledge from past videos for this part. So I have a part here. I'm going to call this kill part. And we're going to make it so that if a player touches this part, then it'll kill them. So the script. So I'm going to set a variable to kill part. So I'll say local kill part. It's game.workspace.kill part. And I'll make an event. So the .touched event, if you remember from last video, events give arguments, and so the argument that the .touched event returns or gives is whatever touched the part. So we can say kill part.touch connect function hit. So we can say if hit.parent find first child humanoid, then print it is a player. So what does this mean? Well, if you remember from, I think it was last video, we looked into what built-in functions were, and find first child is a built-in function, and if it finds a child with the name given in here, then it will return whatever that object is. But if it doesn't find a child with this name, then it'll just return nil, which means nothing. I don't know if we looked into what nil is yet, but nil is just basically just nothing. So let's see if I run. So if I touch this part, you can see in the output it's printing hit is a player a lot. And basically what's going on here is if you look into workspace and you look at your character, you can see that the character has a ton of parts inside of it. So when I go up and touch this part, you can see that all of these parts are touching the kill part simultaneously. And so it's printing it a lot. So if one of these parts touch the player or touch the kill part, then it'll activate this event. And this is the part that touched it. And then it's saying if hit.parent, so the part, and they're saying the parent, which is this, find first child humanoid then. So if it finds something called a humanoid, which it is, because everything, all players' characters have humanoids inside of them, and then it'll print hit is a player. So if we actually want to make the part kill the player, then we can set a variable called humanoid to the player's humanoid. And basically a humanoid is an object in the game that holds a bunch of different properties for characters. So it holds the walk speed of the character, the health of the character, the max health of the character. So we can just say humanoid.health is equal to 0. So this is setting the health of the humanoid to 0. So if we play the game, and we go up and we touch this part, then you can see it kills us. So that's a pretty cool use case for if statements. If statements are really, really important in scripting. You'll use them all the time. So get comfortable with using if statements and what they are. All right, so I'm going to get into what the return keyword does now. So I'm going to create a function. I'm going to call it add numbers. And I'll give 2 parameters, and then I'll print num1 plus num2. I'll call this function as well. Let's print 3 and 5. So when I run this function, they should print 8. Yeah. So I can't actually access what this prints, like what this is outside of this function. So I mean, I could set it to a variable here, and I could do whatever inside of this function, but this stays within the function. So this is where the return keyword comes in. So I could return num1 plus num2. So the return keyword will give something back. So when I call this function, it'll give me back num1 plus num2. So I could set this to a variable. So I'm calling it, and it'll give me back 3 plus 5. So sum would be equal to 8. So if I print sum, you can see it's equal to 8. So this may seem very useless and confusing. I know it was confusing when I first started. So you can kind of think it as there's two different types of functions. So there's ones that just do something for, so I could make a function that just kills a player, and I could pass in what that player is into the parameters. But there's also functions that give back something. So this is a function that will give back something. So a use case for this would be, maybe I could find a player given the player name. So to do that, I would just return game.players player name. I don't think I've gotten into what these square brackets are. So they basically just replace what you're trying to look for. So I couldn't just do game.player.player name, because then it would look inside of game.players and look for something called player name. But since player name always changes, I could do in brackets player name. So I could try, and I'm gonna, so when the player joins, this is kind of an arbitrary use case, but this is just I'm trying to like get you used to what this does, because obviously it's already giving me the player in this player added function, but you know. So I could say local found player equals find player name, and I could print found player. Oh, whoops, I gotta play it. So I can see when I join the game, I'm calling the function, and it's giving me back my player object. So the return keyword is very useful. You can use it for a lot of different things. Like if I had some really complicated math formula and I just passed in some parameters, and I don't know, I could return x times y plus z to the power of x times z. So something like really complicated that you wouldn't want to do over and over and over again, then you could just call the function and pass in the numbers, and it would give back what the answer is. So I don't know what this is going to be, something, so 11. I could change this up to some pretty big numbers, you know. So if a function doesn't have a return keyword in it, it'll return nil by default. So I don't know, I could just do this, and then if I print hello, it'll call this function, so it'll print hi, but it'll return nil. So this should print hi and then nil. Well, it's just printing nothing. All right, so that's the end of this tutorial. Like always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, just leave it down in the comments. I'll try to answer everything I can. Leave a like and subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. So yeah.